Hi, folks. Keith Stickley here with the Stickley Law Firm located in downtown Hillsdale, Michigan. I wanted to take a few moments today to discuss sort of a growing trend that we've been noticing among clients and calls that we've been getting, and that is of DUIs, OWIs, as it's most commonly referred to here in Michigan. And we've been seeing a definite uptick in the amount of people being pulled over and charged with drinking and driving crimes. Now, of course, it goes without saying, please drink and responsibly. Don't get behind the wheel. It's just not worth it. The crime consequences and the penalties can be quite enormous, quite frankly. And last thing we want to have happen is somebody get hurt, or even worse, hurt somebody else. That's an awful burden to live with if you make a decision that hurts or could potentially even take somebody else's life. But that being said, I want to talk about what happens and some key principles that you need to keep in mind if you do find yourself making a terrible mistake and in this situation. Now, I do want to make clear that this is general information based upon my experience. This does not substitute for formal legal advice. And regardless if you contact my office or another attorney's office, it's really, really important that you seek legal guidance if you or somebody that you care about is charged with a drinking and driving crime. Now, we are handling quite a few drinking and driving offenses here in Hillsdale. My office is in the city of Hillsdale. We operate a lot in Hillsdale County, but we also do a lot of drinking and driving offenses in Branch County, specifically Coldwater, Michigan. And it's important to keep in mind that the prosecutors in both Hillsdale and Branch County are known for taking rather hard stances on drinking and driving crimes. And we can understand why. One of the first things you need to realize is that drinking and driving, especially in small communities, has a different kind of an impact as opposed to drinking and driving crimes that occur in the bigger cities. And what do I mean by that? Well, you have to realize that drinking and driving crimes often, unfortunately, end in injuries or even worse to various people. And when you have a tightly knit community of people who often know each other and work and live in that same community, the odds of somebody being somehow connected, somebody who's hurt by a drinking and driving related crime, being somewhat connected to higher profile folks in these communities is much, much greater. And so these kinds of crimes, especially, like I said, when it involves an injury or even worse, tend to be a bit more higher profile. And because of that, a lot of these prosecutors have decided, consciously or unconsciously, to take a harder stand. And that's pretty understandable. Now, what does that mean for you? Well, quite frankly, if you or somebody that you care about is charged with these kind of crimes, you have to realize, unlike some of the bigger communities that we sometimes practice in, like Oakland County, with a couple notable exceptions, but also definitely Macomb and Wayne County, there's often fewer plea deals or offers of leniency just right off the bat without some sort of specific reasoning why. So this is one of the reasons that you really, really need a strong defense. You need strong representation, an attorney who is comfortable and knows how these cases tend to go in these communities. That can be my office. We handle these all the time. We've had a lot of success. There are other attorneys, obviously, that service the community. But the last thing you want to do is come in like a cowboy, like some people do in other communities, and try to represent yourself. You're going to need help navigating these legal challenges. Second thing I think you need to know, and this is absolutely crucial, is that law enforcement officers, police officers here, are very liberal with PBT and chemical test refusal accusations. Well, what does that mean? We need to break this down because this is often what can have the most significant impact on somebody who has been pulled over for a drinking and driving offense, especially if it's their first offense and they made an honest mistake and they are not familiar with the criminal justice system. So when you get pulled over, one of the first things that is often done is a series of tests, field sobriety tests, okay? And along with that, oftentimes police officers will ask you to do what's called a PBT, a preliminary breath test. Now, this is the little machine that they hold in their hand and they'll have you blow into on the side of the road. Now, these are not the most accurate kind of tests, and you've probably heard, unless you've been living under a rock, that the mythical attorney often says, oh, whatever you do, don't blow on the side of the road. Don't blow on the side of the road. And sometimes people take that advice, and that means that they don't blow anywhere. Well, there's a PBT test, which is the roadside test, which might be very smart not to do on the side of the road. But then there's the chemical test, which also sometimes involves blowing into a machine. But in the counties of Hillsdale and Branch County specifically, most often they actually don't do that. They do a blood test. But let's jump into this and why this is important and what is the difference between the two and what should you do? Should you take the test on the side of the road or not? So the PBT, the thing on the side of the road that you're often asked to do, is used to establish probable cause, and it's usually not admissible as evidence, and it's usually okay to refuse that. You have to be polite, obviously, when interacting with the officers, but it's not a terrible thing to say, I am not going to participate in a PBT, a preliminary breath test. Now, sometimes if they have probable cause to arrest you, or the officer does arrest you, rightly or wrongly, they're going to want you to do a second test, okay? And the second test is called a chemical test. Now, this is vastly different than the PBT on the side of the road. And sometimes they will take you to the jail and they'll have you blow in a bigger machine called a data master. Or they'll tell you that they're transporting you to the hospital for a blood draw. Now, when you agree to get a Michigan driver's license with the Secretary of State, you actually give them consent to test your blood alcohol content, okay? And if you refuse the chemical test, then there's some pretty significant potential violations that have nothing to do with your actual drinking and driving case. You do not, I'm going to stress it one more time, you do not want to refuse the chemical test, because if you refuse the chemical test, you will have a 1-year automatic license suspension and 6 points added onto your record. Even if you're found not guilty of drinking and driving, they can still take your license away for a year and drop 6 points on there. That will be a massive headache and expense that you're going to have to deal with. Now, when I say that the officers are liberal with these refusals, I have seen multiple times in both Hillsdale and Coldwater, Hillsdale County and Branch County, where police officers offer a PBT test on the roadside, and then the person being suspected of drinking and driving say no, and then the officer, let's say, pretends that that is a refusal of a chemical test. Now, I know when you're on the side of the road and you've probably had too much to drink, or you're just stressed out because you're being accused of something you didn't do, that's not the time to try and remember, okay, what did that lawyer on the internet actually say? What am I supposed to do here? So just do your best to get this into your brain. It's okay to say no to a PBT, but tell them, I will do a chemical test. I will take a chemical test. If you refuse the chemical test, what they'll do is they call a magistrate or a judge in the middle of the night, and those guys don't really like those phone calls, and they get a warrant, and then they're going to take your blood anyway, right? You're not going to win that battle. And quite frankly, it's a more accurate test, and sometimes it actually can really, really help with your defense. So don't make life difficult in general. I would take the chemical test. Now, if these police officers if they claim that you refused the chemical test, but you didn't really refuse the chemical test, there is a hearing that you can request, that you can demand. This is why it's so important to work with an attorney, because you only have 14 days from the time of the incident to protest that with the Secretary of State and potentially save your license for a year. So if somebody gives you a paper that says chemical test refusal, make sure you lawyer up as soon as possible. Do not skip this step. It's also important to note, I guess kind of point number 3 we'll get into today. Both of these jurisdictions, along with a lot of other jurisdictions in Southwest Michigan, have sobriety courts. So a sobriety court is basically a special program where people who plead guilty to some kind of a drinking and driving charge, they can agree to participate in. And they usually offer additional resources or accountability for drinking and driving based offenses. And there's an emphasis on rehabilitation. as opposed to just punishing somebody for doing the wrong thing. Now, the cool part about these programs is that that is the one situation where even if the Secretary of State revokes your license for being pulled over for drinking and driving, the judge can actually order the Secretary of State to reinstate your license, at the very least on a restricted basis, so that you can still go to court, go to work, do the things that you need to do to survive. This is also really, really important to communicate to your attorney that you might be open to these things. And this is why you should hire an attorney who knows how to do this and knows how to navigate and who the players are in your local sobriety court program, because that right there can be the difference between a drinking and driving conviction that is a nightmare and one that is a learning experience that you'll be able to get through and keep your job and take care of your kids and do all that kind of stuff. So any good experienced lawyer should be able to determine your eligibility and really guide you through the process. So call a lawyer. You're going to need one. The fourth thing that we're going to kind of address today is, a lot of people wonder, do I need an attorney right off the bat after I've been pulled over? Yes, I am totally biased. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I think everybody should have, counsel of their choosing, that they hire. But you might need to use a public defender, and that's okay. Public defenders often do fantastic work. In fact, I highly recommend, I always say this, regardless if it's me or another attorney, that you hire an attorney who has experience as a public defender in addition to their private practice, because that means that they are in the system frequently, they know the rules, and quite frankly, they have a lot more experience than private attorneys who maybe only get to court once or twice a month. Oftentimes, private attorneys who also do some public defender work as a contract basis are in courts and they're practicing much more often. It's like a doctor or a surgeon, right? Do you want to go to the surgeon that's done 17 knee replacements a month, or do you want to go to the guy, that does them every other month? Experience really is crucial. And I think statistics show that you get better outcomes with practitioners who are in court doing this stuff all the time. Now, time is absolutely crucial, even if you think charges might be coming. Preserving evidence like dash cams or video footage, if there's any eyewitnesses, and quite frankly, saving on bond fees can all hinge on early legal intervention, dealing with an attorney. What do I mean by bond fees? We'll talk about that real quick. If you're given a citation but let go for drinking and driving, they're going to make you come back for an arraignment. Now, we have made a video on the Stickley Law Firm channel here on what happens in a misdemeanor case, and it explains the bond process. So after this video, you're going to want to subscribe to our channel and find the misdemeanor video. But basically, if you're not arrested right off the bat, you might be able to save a lot of money on bond by having your attorney enter an appearance and bring you to court and get you a PR bond, a personal recognizance bond. And that could save you a lot of money. All right. And so that's a thing to definitely keep in mind. And it's crucially important that you have a good communication, a lot of trust in whoever you're working with, be it our office or anybody else's. And finding the right attorney is also crucial. Not all attorneys do a lot of DUI. Not all criminal attorneys, do a lot of DUI. And it's important that you're working with somebody who knows the ins and outs and some of the science behind the testing, some of the science behind what the prosecutor needs to prove, and some of the regulations. There's been a lot of different court rules that have come about relatively recently regarding motions that need to be filed if you want to challenge experts that might testify against you regarding the testing process and such. And so you're definitely going to want to find an attorney who can demonstrate or tell you about their track record and how many of these cases they've handled in these areas. Those are basically 4 big points that you need to consider when you or somebody you care about are charged with a drinking and driving based crime. Like we said, a lot of these local prosecutors are pretty strict on these prosecutions. There are some major differences in the difference between a PBT and a chemical test. You need to know that. You need to have an attorney who knows how the sobriety court system works if you're going to enter a plea or you have a mind for rehabilitation. And it's really, really crucial you get your attorney involved as early in the process as you possibly can. that is going to give you the best shot at the best outcome. If you or somebody you care about is looking for an attorney in Hillsdale County or Branch County, Hillsdale, the city, or any of the local communities around it, or Coldwater, Michigan, give my office a call. We are here in downtown Hillsdale. We'll bring you in. We'll look at all the evidence. We'll demand the discovery from the prosecutor, and we'll really do our best to put you in the best possible situation. It means a lot to us that our clients walk out of our doors when the case is over in a better position than when they walked into our office. And we'll do our best to protect your rights, and we'll fight for those rights. And if that means going all the way to a trial, then we go all the way to a trial. If we're able to come up with a satisfactory outcome, we'll do that as well. Regardless, we'll be upfront and honest about what your options are, and we will give you the best possible counsel and advice that we can based upon our experience, which in these communities is quite extensive. Stay safe, don't drink and drive, and if you need us, give us a call.